Hi everyone, welcome to the podcast P is for Plog. Got a bit of a different one this time. I've got a guest, my very first guest, and I couldn't be more delighted to say hello and welcome you to Clara, who I first met last year as I was just starting my professional plogging adventure. I was on a Greenfluencers course that was being run by Behind the Greens Media, and such a great course. But she was one of the people on there, and since that course, I've actually kept in contact with quite a few people from that course or have been connected to that course, and it's been a real eye-opener for me in terms of greenfluencing and how we can sort of inspire people to change. Clara's focus is very much on slow travel and sustainability in traveling, so taking the train instead of the plane. I've left the episode quite unedited, just so that you get a real sense of just the conversation that was going on. I really enjoyed it, and she really helped guide me through this. After all, P is for Plog is my podcast where I'm learning how to become a podcaster as much as anything. It's a bit of a learning curve for me, and I couldn't be in better hands. So she's got her own podcast that I managed to get her to plug 3 times. Anyway, let's get on with that, and I hope you really enjoy this episode. Next week, I'm going to start doing more frequent podcasts, but they're going to be very much focused on the run up to my crazy adventure in May. So I think this was a perfect break from the regular podcasting and starting the sort of the newer focus on one specific adventure that I've got coming up. So without a further ado, let's go to season 2, episode 5, not 3 as I say in a second. Episode 5 of P is for Plog. This episode is called P is for Public Transport. I hope you enjoy it.
Plug it and tag it and post it and bin it. Plug it and tag it and post it and bin it. Plug it and tag it and post it and bin it. Plug it, plug it, plug it.
I'm kicking off season 2 with a bit of an extraordinary change of direction. I've got a guest. Welcome,
Woo.
Clara.
Hi.
Yeah, I set up this podcast just to really get practicing podcasts. So already I've discovered how do I get audio from another source into these things. So it's very much a learning curve. Talking about learning, I want to learn all about this episode, which is P is for public transport, because that is your field of expertise. I'll hand it over to you. Let's give yourself an introduction.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Clara Francken, and I also have a podcast which is called Travel Devil. And basically, I always make content about sustainable traveling because that's something which is very close to my heart. I'm a traveler for a long time, and lately I've been doing more travel by train than usual. Like the last 5 years, I've been traveling a lot by train. Before that, I also did my fair part of traveling by plane, definitely with a long distance relationship that I used to have.
Oh, really? So
yes,
what was the distance? What was the long distance?
Well, the long distance was first between Belgium and Germany, which I then was able to, and now I'm moved to Germany. I'm from Belgium. And besides that, my boyfriend was for a certain amount of time in Slovenia. So we had to go back and forth between Slovenia and Belgium for 1 year.
Oh, wow. And so how did you, I mean, in both of those cases, how did you travel? So was it a case you were did a lot of long distance telephone calls, but then when you met up, is it you always took one sort of transport, or did you try them all? How did it work out for you with those?
Yeah, that's kind of getting back to like the sustainable transport, right? Because in the beginning, I used to travel a lot by plane because it was easier, faster. I was in university, he was studying abroad. So it was just like, okay, I've got like a couple of days off in the weekend, and then maybe the Monday, Tuesday, I don't have school. So let me go to visit him over the weekend. So that was only possible for such a long distance by plane. So that would mean that I would either directly fly to Slovenia or fly to Trieste, which is in Italy, very close to Slovenia, and then take the bus to the capital, Ljubljana, where he was studying. And then, yeah.
So yeah, so it's so funny, isn't it? Because it's straight away you've raised sort of one of my first questions, that the default, when you've got a long distance, the default sort of idea in your head is, let me look at the flights that go there.
Yeah.
You don't consider anything else. So did you switch to going to trains at one point, or was it still sort of early in your sustainable travel sort of life that you just did flights?
Yeah, well, actually, now that I'm living in Germany, when I'm going to Slovenia again, because my boyfriend has got a lot of friends over there, we do go by train. So it is possible, but it's like a full day trip. So from Belgium, it would be a 2-day trip, because it already takes me, when I'm going back and forth between Germany and Belgium, because I live very close to the Czech border. It's called Leipzig. It's 2 hours
Yeah.
under Berlin, not far away from Prague. And so when I'm going from Belgium here, I already take like 8 hours on the train. So count a second day to go to Slovenia, Ljubljana.
Okay, yeah. So in that case, it really is. So in those cases, really is flights are the quickest option. Maybe not the most sustainable, but so you are having to make a compromise in this case. But are there times when you found that a train is actually faster, because now you've got security, so much with security on the flights? Have you found that
Yeah.
sometimes train is faster even?
Yeah, well, I feel like I kind of kicked off this podcast saying like, oh, sustainability, and now all of a sudden I already exposed myself that I did a lot of flights, but it is true. It's just a fact. I think, to answer your question on like which flights or which trains are faster, I think definitely in the case between Belgium and Germany, because like we were talking about my relationship with my German boyfriend 7-8 years ago. When I first came to Germany, I even took like the airplane to go
Yeah.
back and forth between Belgium and Germany, which is Berlin, and it doesn't make sense. Like literally it doesn't make sense, because you have to take so much into consideration. First of all, you have to get to the airport. Then from the airport, you have to check in early, count a couple of hours up on that. Then you're flying for, maybe you're only like 1 or 2 hours in the actual airplane. Then you're arriving, and again, you need to check out, take your luggage, takes time, and then you need to go back, like go to your actual city you need to be at, because the airport doesn't land in this town center, right? So you need to take another train, or have somebody pick you up, or arrange another mode of transport. But for the train, for me, like this is why, like this is something I realized like 7 years ago for the first time. I flew once, and then I was like a bit contradicting myself, because I was like, oh, I want to do something more, but like travel more sustainably. And then I realized that this choice just to take this flight, I only did it once to go back and forth between Berlin and Belgium. And after that, I was like, okay, but actually it can be faster by train, and it can not only be faster, it's more convenient, because now I take one train to the center of Germany, which is Frankfurt,
Yeah.
a second train to Brussels, and I'm already there.
Yeah.
So
It's crazy. And I think going to your sustainability point, I'll tell you a little story about mine, just to make you feel much better, and how, trust me, if there's a level of evil, I'm way higher up on that scale than ever you've been. But it is just so, we're just so conditioned to take that flight, and it just strikes me as so weird. And there's so much more enjoyment on the train. But just to sort of highlight how bad I've been in my past, and I think this is true. We can say we shouldn't feel guilty that we make non-sustainable choices in life. Sustainability needs to be sustainable, and sometimes that you can't do anything other than take that flight. And a point in case was, I worked in England from Haarlem in the Netherlands for a long period of time, and I'd have to travel to get into London from here. And sort of, so what, a lot of the time I would actually fly each week back and forth from the Netherlands to London.
Mm.
But then in contrast, I would cycle, in true Dutch style. I would cycle to the airport, and sort of, so I'd just cycle there, leave my bike there,
Oh,
and I
that's
did
cute.
everything. I did everything else. And then when I was in London, I'd always be taking the train. So apart from that one flight, I don't know how that sort of compared to people doing a daily commute in the car. I mean, how does that one flight a week compare to a daily commute that could be 2 hours long in a car? It's sort of, if you did that each day, I don't know how that does. But have you looked at sort of carbon offsets, and sort of, have you gone down that path, or is it very much just that sort of, I know I need to take a train, I know it's better? Have you sort of done any data on it, or is it's more from your feeling?
Yeah, I think it's for me more on my feeling. I did like watch documentaries, and I wish I would be able to tell you like, oh no, I'm sure this is gonna be 10 times better to take the car or take public transport. I don't know the exact data. I
Yeah,
have
but
to do research on that as well.
oh, let me just interrupt there, because I think the question took Clara by surprise, and she didn't really sort of know the answer. But she did go off and find out the answer for me, just to make sure I am as evil as I said I was. And sure enough, just taking the plane once a week really is not anywhere close to being the equivalent of doing a long commute in the car each day. The plane is way worse. So yeah, it really sort of brought that home. So I think that just sort of shows you how diligent and passionate about the subject that Clara is. She really wanted to know the answer to that. So anyway, let's get back to the podcast.
To really give you numbers. But for me, it really came from like, okay, you're educating yourself, you're watching documentaries, you're just thinking about like, okay, what kind of person do I want to be? Like, also even the feeling. It's one part is sustainability,
Exactly.
but also the feeling of being like teleported from one place to the other. I mean, it's just way nicer to see the surrounding change, and
It's
that's
more, yeah.
happening for me by train.
With it feels to me that with flying, there's dead space. There's this, a lot of the time you're hanging around, you're unable to do anything, you're unable to be productive. You're, in effect, you're wasting time, where it feels like that's so much less on the train. It's way more mindful in terms of taking the train. And I'm completely with you. I do all my sort of plogging just because I know it's the right thing to do. I know it is better. I don't really care how much it's better by, but I know that if I do this, I'm making an improvement on my own life. So let's go. But we've so far we've just talked, and I haven't actually asked you any of the questions I've got on my list. So so let's go straight in there. So one of the things that really talking about your podcast, you mentioned, what was the name of the podcast again?
Travel Devil.
There you go. So there you go. Plug halfway through. We'll get a plug at the end as well. No, I noticed you had one, sort of a friend of mine. I say a friend. We've never actually met or even spoken in person, but Andreas, the trash traveler. So I'm a huge fan of his. And you were telling him a story about someone flicking a cigarette out the window.
Yeah.
Yeah, and and that sort of raised a question in my mind, is that I think his response was, yeah, it's not in terms of telling them off, it's just informing them and sort of saying, hey, is that the right thing to do, and sort of giving them that choice. Have you had to do that on the train? Have you had to sort of have these conversations with people to say, oh, what you're doing is actually antisocial, or what you're doing is if you did it this way, then it would be better? Do you have those conversations or a train, or are you very much in a little bubble just doing your own thing?
I love your question. First of all, Andreas, the trash traveler, he's amazing. He was really inspiring. I talked to him for my previous episode, and just like having this conversation with him was really inspiring to me, which is why I have guests on my show, and it's really inspiring. So I'm glad to talk about that as well here. And yes, I think on the train, I'm not specifically in a bubble. I think the great thing is about like when you're actually on the train and you're seeing, because there are two things. Like there's one thing is like, okay, you're seeing people on the train like actively leaving trash in the train as well, which is closer to what we were talking about, like picking up trash and everything. And the second part is making sure that more people take the plane instead of uh, lol,
Oh
take
no!
the
Oh no!
train
Okay,
instead
I'll
of
edit that bit
taking
out.
the plane. All right. So yeah, I think on the train, if we're talking more about the first part of it, I'm not in my bubble. I really do talk with the people on the train. I have had better and worse encounters with people on the train, but I'm quite talkative. And I think slow travel really opens up gates to like have conversations with other people. And then if somebody leaves their trash, I would tell them like, "Hey, you forgot it." I wouldn't mm, really like tell them like, "Here's the bin, put it
Yeah.
in there." But I would definitely tell them. And then for the part of like informing people that there is an option, I always say like, "Hey, is this flight really necessary for like such a short weekend?" Or like, how far is it again? If it's like under 1,000 kilometers, I think you can get there by public transport. Definitely, if you're speaking of Europe. Of course,
Yeah.
outside of Europe, I don't think I'm the best spokesperson because I don't know it so much. But in Europe, under 1,000 kilometers of travel, you can definitely do it by train. And it's
And
an easy solution and it's not gonna take you much longer. And if you're planning your tickets ahead, it can even be cheaper.
yeah, and that was actually an interesting point because when I did the Plogging World Championships, so when I first did that in 2022, I flew. It was I was in that default mindset, and then I met someone who traveled from Sweden to get there, from Sweden to Italy, and it was I was like, blew my mind. And she convinced me, saying, look, this is ridiculous. You're going to a Plogging World Championships and you're flying here. You should be doing something that's a little bit more in your style. You should be taking the train. So I said I would. Then the next year, I was a bit rushed, and I had no idea that Interrail in Europe was available for people that are in their 50s. I thought it was limited to people of a certain age, and that was just sort of my understanding at that time. So I was looking at regular train tickets, and it was costing me a fortune. I was like going, it's going to take me more time realistically, and it's going to cost me a fortune. So I didn't do it. It was only when I discovered Interrail. So do you have any, how do you find prices, and are you an interrailer, or are you, or how do you work out what the best place is to get the tickets? How do you do that?
It's a very complicated question because it really depends on the country.
Oh,
I love Interrail. I think Interrail is really good in specific occasions. Now that I'm above 28, I do have to pay a bigger price for the Interrail ticket. It used to be cheaper because I was considered to be youth, uh, not youth anymore.
well, welcome to the club. I think I'm going to be in the pension category soon. So
Yeah, so you will be cheaper soon again. That's amazing. You can look forward to that already.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, for me, it's difficult. What I do is I really try to plan ahead, even with Interrail. You think you're flexible, but I would always suggest everybody who's traveling by train, it's not a last minute option. It's not like in some countries. I'm from Belgium. The first time I traveled by train, I came outside of my little bubble in Belgium and I went to the Netherlands. And in the Netherlands, even like the prices are way higher. Also, I think you know it better. You're living there, but
Yeah.
I think the prices can increase over time as well, if I'm
Yeah. Oh,
correct.
oh gosh, that I don't know. So
You
because
don't know.
now I just use a card, and oh gosh, they're probably screwing me over. I just use the sort of the train pass, and I get billed monthly. I'm like, oh no, now I'm gonna have to look into it.
Yeah. No, but I just remembered coming to the station and wanting to buy my tickets to go from Amsterdam to Groningen. And
Yeah.
it was, I don't remember, it was like 80 euros or something.
Oof.
And I just came in and I was like, okay, I'm buying this today for today, right? Because this is how I grew up with like knowing like the prices are not changing and there's no specific actions that I need to check. Then somebody in the train station helped me, and he said like, yeah, if you go to this store you can get a cheaper price with this specific ticket, whatever. It was a very complicated thing to find a cheaper ticket at the time, and it really woke me up that Belgium is a little bubble where the prices are always the same. No matter how far you go in Belgium, you always pay a flat price,
Oh,
which
wow.
is, and also you don't pay differently today than if you plan it ahead of time. You'd never have to buy a ticket ahead of time. We're coming now to a European level. It's
Yeah.
different. So I use Interrail a lot. And I love, love, love Interrail. It's amazing. It's giving a lot of flexibility, specifically if you're not sure like how long you're going to stay in which place. But again, in some countries, like in the south of Europe, you need seat reservations. It's mandatory. And
Yeah.
when it's mandatory, it's also going to be filled earlier. So I was stuck once in Barcelona trying to get back to Belgium, and the train was full. Like they said like, oh yeah, there's already 20 interrailers on this train, so you cannot book another seat reservation
Oh,
because it's fully booked
yeah.
for the interrailers.
Oh, that's
So
interesting.
I didn't know this either at that time, and I was like, okay, well then I have to travel a different way, a different route. But it wasn't a direct train anymore. I had to take 3 trains instead of 1. You know,
But then that just creates the adventure. And I had that when I
that
did go
creates the
to
adventure, but
Italy.
it's more expensive because
It,
for every
yeah,
train you need to pay a seat
true.
reservation again.
Yeah, yeah, that's it. And do you plan do you plan a bigger gap than you would like? I mean, because then that's the thing, you got transfers. And so do you sort of make sure, do you play safe on the safe side, or do you sometimes go, I've got 2 minutes to make this, I'm not going to make it in time, oh, the train's running late?
Okay, yeah, there I would say for Interrail, I do plan some time between. But for regular tickets, I don't. I even love it when it's like too late, because if I miss my train and there's a next train that I miss, love it is a big word, but I'm starting to appreciate the German delays because I get a refund, you know, you get some money back, and the tickets are sometimes really expensive. And I'm somebody who really looks a lot at my expenses of like on monthly basis and on yearly basis. And one of my biggest expenses last year was train tickets.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think I spent like almost 2,000 euros on train tickets.
Oh, wow. But yeah.
So if I can reduce that by every time having a little delay and then getting 25% or 50% off of the original price, I welcome it.
So you're actually seeing the delays on the German train system is actually a good thing.
Well,
It's
I'm trying to embrace it. If it's delayed anyway, I rather get something back for it, right?
Yeah, and I think that was, going back to that sort of, I think it's a mindset change between the yeah, certainly for me it was but I was worried about train delays, I was worried about connections and things like that. But so often when I've flown recently, or not that I've very flown very often recently, but a couple of years ago, when I did the last time I went to Italy for the World Championships, suddenly my flight got cancelled and I was stuck somewhere. And when you're stuck for hours. It's not like you're stuck for, you got to try and figure it out somewhere different. It felt like it was more like a fun puzzle to work out on the train. Oh, hang on, if I go in this direction and this direction, in with the flight, I was just, oh, what do I do now? And I was just,
It's terrible. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah,
know. I had it recently because I do still fly once a year with my family. We go on holidays. One time I came back by train from Greece, but it's not always possible. And this year, like actually last year now, 2024, we went to Greece and we had to take 2 flights to get there and 2 flights to go back. And like they were in Dutch it's called stakingen.
yeah,
I lost the words.
yeah, striking. Yeah, it was a strike.
Striking. They were
Yeah,
striking, and then we had to like last minute change everything. We wanted to get to another airport, which was actually in the Netherlands. And then there was I don't know what, there was a military problem in the airport, which makes sure that no plane was leaving that day because
yeah,
of some technical issue. And then we had to plan again another train, and this costed so much. Like you have to max out your credit card or something for this, because maybe you get your money back, but not at the
Yeah.
moment you're buying this, and it's such a logistic problem. So you can see me with my 2 sisters, my mom, what am I saying? Me, my 2 sisters, my dad, his girlfriend, my grandparents.
Oh,
Like,
wow.
we're a big group, and then everybody's like under stress. So yeah,
And of
I would
course,
have loved
yeah.
if my family would be open to take the train next time. I can show them around.
And the biggest win for me with the train was I always had the luggage by me. It wasn't a case of, oh, hang on, my luggage is where, or my luggage is on this flight. They've got to take the luggage off, or yeah, it seems to be sort of a very different sort of mindset. So you're an experience. I mean, yeah, wow. I'm going to be coming to you when I need to buy tickets. That's for sure. But so you're also a creator. So one of the questions I posted this in on LinkedIn, which was, have you got any sort of tips that you have in terms of things to take with you when you're just traveling by train? What are some of your essentials? And then how does that change when you're a creator? Are there any extra things that you think are really good tips for as a creator on a train?
Yeah. Okay. So I would say, first of all, as a train traveler, I love to have everything in a bag and then a bag in a bag. So let's say I've got my
Oh,
little backpack,
yeah.
and in my backpack, I have a couple of tote bags. I've got one tote bag with all my cables. I've got a tote bag with my food. I've got my water accessible at the outside of my bag. I've got my computer in another one, so that everything is a bit separate in one bag, because I don't want to be walking around with many different bags because it's not convenient. But I also want to structure everything. And because you're taking more when you're traveling, I like to do it like that. Also, my clothes, I've got my laundry in one bag and my normal clothes in even another bag. So for
And
shorter trips, everything goes in my backpack. For longer trips, I do also take like a very small suitcase. It's very easy, and it's one on 4 wheels, which you can turn. I
yeah.
would not recommend the one with only 2 wheels, because sometimes you got to turn it to put it in, how to say, to put
Oh,
it
yeah.
sideways,
Yeah,
to roll it
exactly.
like in a vertical
Yeah,
way instead of a
yeah.
horizontal way, kind
Oh, that
of,
makes sense. In
on
that
the
case,
train. So I would
yeah,
definitely recommend like a small suitcase with 4 wheels. Um, and yeah, that's, I think, it for that side. Also for the food, maybe I can share that as well. Food and drinks. Always
yeah,
take enough water with you. Um, I depends on which country you're visiting. Even in Europe, sometimes it's practical to have like um, a water bottle with a filter in it. I don't know. I just have it with me,
yeah,
depending on which country I'm going to. Sometimes it's easier and convenient that you can just like refill it if you're not sure, and you can still drink the water. And any kind of containers, if it's for water or if it's for food, that are foldable, and you can make it small when they're empty. So, for example, the water bottle could be like this kind of water bottles that people who are running a lot, they
yeah,
use, and they empty it, and it's just like, it's very
yeah,
very
exactly.
lightweighted, and it's like emptying itself basically. And for food, this could be just a regular cloth, probably. You can also use a paper bag, but I have, for example, now it's called roll and no wait rock and roll, no, it's roll and roll or something like this. It's a brand, but it's basically also like a cloth, and you can close it on both sides, and then you can roll it up and roll your
Oh,
food
yeah.
in there. um,
Oh, yeah.
and
That
then
I
when
mean,
it's
that's yeah.
empty again, you don't have
That's such a
much to
handy
take
tip
with you.
because those, they're so handy, these fixed containers, but when they're empty, all they're doing is just taking up room. And the other good tip about doing it with the bags is you now see in terms of, you just get so many adverts for, oh, like this rucksack's got 15 compartments, but it's as simple as just have it in 15 bags in your own bag. You just need one space, and it makes it so much easier. Oh, that's a really good tip.
Yeah,
Super.
it's called buck and roll. I just saw I'm just Googling as we are speaking. It's called Buck and Roll, the one I have now. Yeah, but there's many brands that do the same. But it's just like if you see some things like that, it's always easy and convenient. And then when we're talking, because you were also asking about the creator parts,
Yeah.
I think basically what I said already covers a lot. But additionally, I would definitely recommend you to have what is it called, like a USB plug
Yeah. Do you find that all
with
the
with
trains now
multiple
have?
ports.
Do you find that all the trains now have USB sockets and things? Is that something that you get? Oh, damn! I don't have a
Well,
power bank.
that's the
Or
thing. So you won't find it on every train, but when you're traveling by train, you will be going on multiple trains on
yeah,
one day.
yeah,
So and sometimes you don't find it in your departure, but you can like go to the first class and probably you see one there, and then you can just friendly ask one person like, hey, can you look at my phone? I'm charging it here for an hour or something. And the easy thing, if you have like this kind of socket with, I cannot show it to you now, but I've got a socket with like multiple plugs
yeah.
and the space for a normal plug as well.
Oh, that's clever.
Um,
Yeah,
and that's so easy because if somebody else wants to charge, you're not taking their space. If somebody else is already charging, you can just say like, hey, but I'm just adding it. I'm not taking away your space.
yeah,
And you can charge multiple devices because if you're a creator and I'm on the road all the time, I want my phone charged, I want my computer charged, I want my little pocket lamp charged, I want my microphones charged. I've got 3 of them because I've got a
yeah,
wireless Go 2. So I've
yeah,
got the one taking in the sound, and then I've got the 2 microphones.
yeah. The transmitter and
And
the
then
receiver.
maybe
Yeah,
there's something else also that
yeah.
I need to charge. So there's a lot of things that need charging, which is also, of course, the reason I've got a separate tote bag with all the cables.
Yeah, that is such a valuable. Yeah, one of the good things I like about the EU sort of directive now to sort of just make sure it's just a single type of charger, because when I travel, so for so many years I've had, oh, hang on, I need this specific cable for this specific device, and it's just become a nightmare. So I'm so
Mm,
glad that they're finally sort of just bringing it all in.
yeah.
The so we've got to get a bit onto plogging because
Yeah.
after all, this is peers for well, it is peers for public transport, so that's okay. But someone said this to me the other day, and so I hope Andreas hasn't come up with this idea. So and I hope he's not listening, because one of the things I want to do is I want to plog from end to end on a train. So I actually want to go from one side of the train to the next and see how much trash I can actually find on the floor. And I think my question is, if I were to do that, sort of, are there any countries that you kind of go, oh, you're going to fill your bag, you're never going to get to the end of that train? And I'm going to say the Netherlands is one of those. It was shocking to me in Italy when I did the World Championships. I think it's what last year with the championships made clear to me is different regions are very different. So I went into Italy with they just litter everywhere. But then I went into the mountains and the trains were so clean. And it just really shocked me coming back to the Netherlands. And as soon as I went into the first train on the Netherlands, there was just all these coffee cups on the ground. So, are there any tips of where I should first plug? Which country, or which train should I first plug on?
Oh God.
You're not allowed to
I
say
think
all
it's
of
a
them. You're not allowed to say all of them.
I think it's difficult to choose one. I think sadly uh every country probably faces some part of it. I had like very terrible trains in France, but even in Germany sometimes, or in I've heard bad things about Greece, but I didn't travel by train in Greece. I just directly took a
Yeah,
boat to leave Greece when I traveled back from Greece. But I think it depends also on the train, not only on the country. Because, for example, in Germany, there are some trains where you find more trash, and mostly those trains are the ones where you don't have a trash can directly next to your seat. So there are some trains here in Germany where you have it only like it's kind of a half floor area.
yeah,
So you have to get up, like walk those couple of stairs up or those couple of stairs down because it's like a double decker. And then in the middle, you will find a trash can. But Like the first time I was looking for the trash can in that kind of trains, I really had to ask somebody like, where is the trash can, you know? So in those kind of trains, you will probably find more trash because some people just don't know where it is.
Yeah,
Um,
I think that's a good
but
point.
sadly,
And
I don't
also,
think I can give you a really good
okay,
answer.
all
There
right.
is
I will
not
just
one
start with
that
the
stuck
Netherlands.
out, which is actually good news.
Yeah,
Maybe.
yeah. I think that's one of the things I've sort of seen over the years is I mean, those bins as well. They're just some of them are a nightmare to get into. They sort of you think, oh, your eyes just lit up. Then they are a nightmare to use. You think, okay, they've got a bin, but you can't even fit a cup in there. You'd have to crush it to fit it in and things. Have you? No, you're just nodding your head there.
Yeah, I'm nodding my head because if I see the struggle even as a traveler. Because sometimes you want to use the bin, but then the bin is not accessible. It's full. It's sticky on the outsides. So you don't want to almost touch it. You rather take your bin with you and save it for the trash can when you're outside of the train. Um, Sometimes it's inconvenient because of the way it's built. You have to, like, when you're sitting with people, for example, you've got a table and then somebody's computer is on top of it. So you every time you want to put something in the bin, you have to be like, hey, like your cup is on there or your computer is on there. Can I quickly put it in there?
Or you've got to
So
move
it's not.
someone's knee.
Yeah, or you
They
have to
can't.
use somebody's knees if it's underneath. Exactly. So I don't know. Um,
Yeah.
it's not the best, and I'm not sure if it's always like if people take it out fast enough. But I do think now that I'm thinking about like the dirtiest places are obviously the toilets
Oh,
as well.
yeah.
Like I don't think you will love that part of your plugging experience if you want to do
I'm
that
gonna.
as well,
Okay.
because on
All
the
right.
floor there's so much toilet paper.
I'm not gonna. I'm not even gonna go into the toilets. I will plug the corridor. I will plug just the aisle. I'll just go down the aisle, and I will not go into the toilets. Yeah, I think unfortunately that is a reality that we have, but that's true of public toilets. Really, it doesn't have to be a train if we're in a. Yeah, it's. I
I
think the airport's a little bit different, maybe, but then you just see them constantly cleaning them. So
I found that a lot of public toilets in the train stations are very clean.
yeah,
Um, so I'm wondering why they cannot clean the toilets in the trains if they
yeah.
can do it outside of the train. Like, I mean, also a lot of the time at the beginning of the journey, the train toilet is still very clean, and by the end of the trip, like you don't have toilet paper anymore, or there's another issue. There's always something, and then if you're telling somebody that there's an issue, instead of coming and cleaning it up, they would just lock the door and you cannot use the toilet anymore. I've had it multiple
Oh.
times. So sometimes I rather not tell it because then we can still use the toilets.
We've got onto toilets here. P, yeah, yeah. P is for another word. I'm not going to use that word. So we're that's going to be that's going to be an episode later on. The but yeah, I mean as a runner, one of the things that I do is I always have toilet paper on me anyway. So and that's a good tip for the train. Yeah, you always have to have toilet paper
Mm,
on you. It's a sad reality, but that's true of any public toilet, I think. So
yes.
in terms of tips, so I did my first. I loved going to the World Plogging Championships last year on the train. It was a monstrous effort, and it was the first time I'd ever done it. So to do such a long journey across multiple countries, and the
How
biggest,
many days were you on the roads?
I was just one. It's a bit sad, isn't it? Oh no, it was no, but it was more. No, it was more than one. I had to do an overnighter. So that was the biggest problem I had was actually sleeping. I made them. Maybe it's my age, but for me, that did not work. I made such a fundamental flaw of thinking I'll just sleep on the chair in the chair, and my legs were just cramped because there was the person in front of me. It was full the train, so I couldn't move out. So that was a real discovery for me. Are you comfortable with sleeping on those chairs, or have you got any sort of tips for me that you think okay, you have to make sure that you do that on a journey more than one day? Always book a sleeper, or is it or I mean, it's a bit of a random general question, but I need tips. Give me tips for long distance journeys.
Yeah, well, I think for the sleepers, it really, again, depends on the train and it depends on the country because I've been hearing a lot of good things about sleepers. Personally, I did not experience that good part of it. Um,
Oh, that sounds like a
so
story
I,
there. What's the story? What's the story? Tell us.
yeah, oh gosh. So the last time I took a sleeper, I booked a ticket first. It was very, very cheap between Belgium and Germany again because I do a lot of back and forth. And I wanted to test, is the sleeper viable option for me? Because then I don't have to travel during the day. I just go to bed, wake up, and I'm already home. Well, I was home, but I slept the whole day next day.
Yeah.
So I lost the day anyway. Um, but basically, what happened is it was a train going to Berlin and it stopped somewhere very close to Leipzig, where I live, so I could get out very early in the morning. It was good. The idea was amazing, but I had booked the cheapest ticket, which was 34 euros. Was a little department with 6 people who would sit in the same department. So me being one of them, we arrive. The train arrives. We all get in, and the floor is like totally wet already. It's not the best vibe. Everybody's a bit like, oh, this is annoying. Like, why is the floor wet? There's a
Was it just
problem
being
over
clean
here.
thing, or it wasn't
I
wasn't
think it
clean?
was raining and a lot of people entered with wet
Uh,
shoes
yeah,
before us, and then nobody dried the floor. So
yeah.
it was like this kind of dirty wet. But okay, I mean, that can happen, and it's only the floor, but we don't want to put our bags on the floor, and you're 6 people. So everybody has to put their stuff in the shelves above. Fast forward, we're all sitting, and the train is not leaving, and we are hearing a discussion between two conductors of the trains. And basically, they're arguing for who gets this department of the train where we're sitting. Because this train was splitting somewhere, and a part was going to Vienna, and another part was going to Berlin. And during the night, the train was going to split, and I needed to get to Berlin. But apparently, the part where I was sitting, according to the lady, had to go to Vienna. But I had booked my seat reservation and my seat, everything, and I should be going to Berlin, right? So after a bit of a heated discussion, they decided that we all had to leave this apartment. We had to go in another train department, and then the people who needed to go to Vienna because they didn't have a seat. Probably there was just like one department, a wagon missing. So they could all sit in the department where we had to sit, and then we were able to go to another department, which was a bit better because it was a place which had like sleepers. You could really like lay on a bed,
Yeah.
and you had like more separate rooms. So I received like a fully separate room for me. It was amazing, but I was not allowed to take out the bed, and I didn't know how to because you needed a special key for that,
Oh, really?
and they didn't want to put it out because I didn't pay for it, right? Because I
You're
had a cheap
kidding.
tickets, so I had to sit. Um, and the chairs there, you were not able to like pull out the chair like you would have been able to do in the other
Yeah.
on the other seats. So I had to like lay down on the 3 chairs next to each other, which was a bit hubbly, but it was okay. I mean, like I had like my own separate room already. The floor was dry. I was good.
Yeah.
I even had like a place to brush my teeth. Everything was good until in the night, I hear my neighbor going to the toilet again, we've got the toilet plug, going to the toilet every second hour and flushing the toilet during the night.
Then you
So
just hear the
every
noise.
time I woke up, I just wanted to throw my shoe to the wall to tell him like, why are you why are you making so much sound during the night? So I had a rough night because of that. And then the next morning, this train didn't have um, any any digital aspect. It was a very old train which was used, which is amazing. I mean, they're using old trains to re-put more trains on the tracks, right? That's a good
Oh,
thing.
that's a good
But there
point.
was no voice and there was no screens.
Yeah.
So I didn't know when I was arriving. And the train had a delay. Nobody told me there was a delay. So I had to look on my phone for finding out that there was a delay. And then when we arrived, I really had to be like, okay, it's like 8. I should have been coming already like since half an hour. Why am I still not here? So I had to always check on my phone to see where am I on Google Maps. So I mean, it did have a lot of good, like the good thing is it's possible and it's already like the first step. But I think there's a lot of improvement. It's a long story, I know, but
No,
there's
no,
a
it's
lot of things that
perfect.
can be improved.
I'm just worried that because I mean you're a huge fan of slow travel, and it was a game changer for me doing that trip to Italy. I know it sounds like it's just one trip that's changed my life, but it really is. And I really hope that people don't sort of take away from this sort of podcast that there's all these negative things, because the negative things I've had flying is just ridiculous. It's just crazy. And I think the great thing is we can
I
sort of
think,
share these stories, and they're fun stories that they add color to our lives. And at the end of the day, we've got there. We've had fun
yeah.
doing it.
Yeah, and I was way less frustrated than when I was frustrated with the plane just not flying. I mean, that was a whole other level of frustration. You cannot even compare it. But yeah, it's true. Like it's also nicer. Like it's fun to tell like rough stories from the road. I can also tell you how my train arrived on time, more than half of the time. I never have any delays. But that's
Yeah.
not a fun story to tell. Maybe
Ex-
maybe I can tell it, but I mean, like, it's not interesting. It's just like, oh, I
the
got on
last
the
okay, the
train and
last
I
how did the last train trip go for you? The very last one you've just been on.
okay, my very last train was
Please let
literally
it be a
two
good
days
one.
ago.
Please let it be a good one. Please let it
Yeah,
be a
it
good
was
one.
literally 2 days ago. It was very easy, very convenient. I was in Brussels already, so um, I took the tram to the train station. My train arrived on time. I sat on the train.
Yeah,
I
you're right. It's
arrived
boring. This
and
is
I
boring.
arrived in
This is boring.
Frankfurt. Then I took the second train. Yeah, the trains
Yeah.
were perfectly timed. My boyfriend came to pick me up at my destination, and then we took the tram to go back home. So
Exactly.
I was there, but like within 7 hours. I worked a lot on the train. I did a lot of editing for my podcast. I called with some friends. I had a fun time.
And that's it. And that's exactly what I had. And I have. I mean, I don't do long journeys, but I've always had my one of the things I have in life is okay. If I need to get somewhere, I will always ask, can I run there? And if I can run there, I'll run there. If I can't run there, can I bike there? If I can't bike there, or if I can, then I'll bike. Or can I take a bus? Or can I take a train? And I take all of these things before it gets to the car or to a plane now. And it just adds. It turns into you're going to you're on a journey to get somewhere, and whereas a plane is from A to B with something in between, this from A to B on a train is always something special. Or whether it's a hilarious bad story or whether it's just smooth sailing and you get loads of work done, it's it's just a real. You're not losing anything. You're just adding. And is that how you feel about it as well?
I mean, that's the thing of slow travel in general. It's part of the journey. It's not about being teleported to your destination and then having your fun holiday and then going back and be teleported home. You're um, experiencing the travel, you're seeing your surrounding, you're meeting local people, maybe already on the train. You're able to see how this environment changes. So it's definitely part of the travel. It's just like and I think integrating that in your life will just make you a happier person as well, because I feel
Agree.
like traveling slower and being able to have these conversations with people on the roads, or just even if you're not a talkative person, just looking outside of the window, You can't even bring your camera. I did it for a while, and I just took amazing pictures from outside of the window. I never
Some,
shared them
yeah.
with anyone. It was just amazing for me.
Well, you
And
have shared some on social media, and it's you just kind of go, wow, yeah, like the snow.
yeah,
You've
I
got
do
some of
share a
this,
couple of them, but
yeah,
that's more like what my phone. All of my phone footage is for social media. My camera footage,
yeah.
I
No,
keep
it's
more for myself.
and I think it's just I've had some amazing journeys. I did one in Cape Town in South Africa. I drove on a train from Cape Town to Simon's Town or something, and it went along literally on the water's edge, and it was just the most amazing views for the whole time. A plane has a stunning view, but you've seen it once, and yeah, there's not
Yeah.
much difference. You don't see a change in landscape, you don't see a change in culture, and you really see that
Mm.
on the train. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah. Like lately I had like two experiences like in the last 6 months of traveling by train that I really loved. One was the one train journey between Barcelona and Paris. There's a long train, and it's like going through the south of France, um, at the east side of the coast, on the bottom. And the view was amazing. Like it's so beautiful. I saw flamingos. It was amazing. You would never spot those flamingos on your airplane. It was
Exactly.
amazing. It was a beautiful view. I
Wow.
was super happy. Everybody was looking outside of the window. Everybody was enjoying their time. And the second part was actually even more recently, because it's like becoming more winter time, is literally seeing the climate change. Like going from one place where it's just nice weather, entering cold Germany where it's snowing.
Yeah.
And it was amazing to just see how the climate also is different.
And
I
you
mean, you
really
feel it
see
when
that
you're there, but it's
change.
amazing to see the change.
Yeah. Oh, this has been so, yeah, I think that's fantastic. I've got loads more questions, but I think we've gone beyond. I wanted to keep this to 30 minutes, but I've been enjoying it too much. So where can we sort of find you on, give us all your Instagram handles and things like that so that we know where we can sort of look you up, and especially the podcast again. Go on, third time plug. You can plug as many times as you like on this podcast.
Amazing. All right. So you can find me on social media at Clara Francken. Um, and you can also listen to my podcast on every podcast app. It's called Travel Devil. So
Super.
it's all about social media. It's all about, what am I saying? It's all about sustainable travel. I also sometimes make content about language related topics, because I do speak 5 languages. I speak Dutch, German, French, English, and Turkish. So I sometimes make some fun content about that as well, but it's mainly about sustainable travel. And I really love doing it. I love the interviews I'm doing for my podcast, because those are the ones that inspired me to start my own journey as well. I also have a YouTube channel, actually, which is where I started my journey interviewing people.
Wow.
Um, and yeah, I've been doing it since. So I'm
Amazing,
really
eh?
happy. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna end the podcast now. So what I'll do is I'll just show you a few on the outro, just as we're playing the music. I'll show you a few clips from Clara's feed, just so you can sort of get an idea and feel for her accounts and what she believes in. And then when we come back, I'll just give you how this ties up with plugging, because I don't think we've talked about plugging much at all.
Yeah.
Plug it and tag it and post it and bin it. Plug it and tag it and post it and bin it. Plug it and tag it and post it and bin it. Plug it, 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 plug it.
Okay, thanks, Clara, for joining. This has been amazing. I'm definitely going to do more and more guests. I think the question on everyone's mind is they're checking into my podcast to see how it's going with my own journey in terms of blogging. But really, the title of the title of my accounts on social media is Way of Life, and this is very much finding new things to improve your life that also improve the environment that we're in. And so, slow travel has really become something that I want to embrace, and I've always loved. So it really is my way of life. And then maybe you can get some tips from Clara's conversations she's had here and try it yourself. And maybe her way of life could be your way of life too. Thank you, everyone. I'll speak to you on the next episode. Bye now. Oh, you can say bye as well.
Yeah, I want to say bye. And actually, can I add something to your outro?
Oh, damn it.
Because
It was so smooth. I could have to retake that. That was just so fantastic. I
that was
nailed it.
very smooth. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I would love to just say that I really appreciate what you're doing and your work as well, because you've been raising awareness about like plugging in a more unconventional way. And I really love how you're doing it. You're trying to get media attention. It's not about you, it's about the climate and it's about plugging. It's about the whole concept of it. It's about integrating many people and like raising awareness for a big issue, and you're doing it in a fun way. You're doing so great. And I absolutely love looking at your Instagram feed. I love what you're doing. I love the podcast. So I'm a big fan of your work, and I really want to like tell you that as well, because it's really important what you're doing. You're doing amazing job.
You're not meant to make me cry on my podcast. That's not how it's meant to be.
No, but it's so important. I mean,
But
coming
it,
from somebody with a background, like we were talking about so many important things here, and like it's never too late to do something, and everybody's something is something else. And yeah, I just
no,
feel
but it's
so
true. It's
great when
so.
I see your content and what you're doing. I just, yeah, I
Oh
need to
gosh.
tell you that it's
Oh,
important.
thank you. Thank you. Oh, but it's I cannot let you have the last words. I have to go, and it's the same thing with you and how we got together on Behind the Greens, and all those other creators. That it's what we're not trying to be the most amazing. Just like you said, you take flight still. It's not that we have to remove. Sustainability should be adding to our life. It should be bringing joy, and for me, train travel brings joy, plugging brings joy, and that shows through in your account. And I think it's so important that we say, look, you don't have to give up things. You can add, bring things in, and just let it become part of your life. So, wow, thank you so much. I'm going to just do my
Of
outro
course.
now. Again. You're not allowed to say anything else. Speak to you next week. That's it. Bye. Cool. Oh wow, you weren't meant to sort of say that at the end.
I'm sorry. I just felt like I needed to tell you this as well on the podcast, because people also need to hear this maybe, because